Hello, everyone, and welcome to another installment of TED Excellence, the show in which we find out that every mushroom cloud has an ideological lining. And I come to you live from my Corona bunker on the moon with Dogcat Fox, a Pepperjack, and all of you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Thursday. Terrifying Thursday. Yes, we return once again to the wonderful world of off-brand TED Talks for education and entertainment. I call it Thursday night. Hope you're all doing well this evening. Hope you've all had a good week so far. Oh, it's been quite a week for me, full of disappointment and frustration. Basically because I watched the last episode of The Book of Boba Fett and the last episode of Lucifer. I won't go into the details. That'd be a totally different video. But yeah, I was not a happy camper. But hopefully this evening, I'll be educated and enlightened and informed about how the COVID crisis can be an opportunity for justice. I wait with bated breath. But before we get to the quality of my breath, who's joining me this evening? Why, that'd be Kiever Dam, hello. Patrice Ripley, hello. Corey Suzuki, hello. Jaeger Pony, hello. Brittany Holland, hello. Who else is here? No, nothing to see here, hello. Swirl Blue, hello. Pie Guy 07, hello. Nobody Not Me, hello. Mike R, hello. Zeke Weiss, hello. Mike Savage, Blard. Peter Silak, Hades 313, hello. Deco, hello. Ryan R, hello. Jeannie Melquist, hello. Cannibalistic Wizard, hello. Matt Barnes, hello. Goda Lee, hello. Hope you're all doing well this evening. All right, so yes, how the COVID crisis can be an opportunity for justice. You know, because nothing says sincerity like taking advantage of misery for your own ideological ends, I guess. But I don't know. I mean, I'm guessing. I haven't watched this, as with all the TEDx's, so I don't know what's going to be said or what the argument will be. But we will learn together because, I mean, it's not impossible to make lemonade out of lemons, right? Okay. So what kind of justice are we looking for? I can imagine, but I don't know. So I'll withhold judgment until I hear for sure. So with that, I'll start off with a few seconds for sound test. Oh yeah, by the way, couple of things. First, the bingo card this evening. I almost forgot that part. The bingo card is bingo card B. B as in bubonic plague, as was the result of the poll on Twitter for which bingo card to use tonight. If you would like to participate in the poll to choose the weekly bingo card and or to just follow my various rantings on Twitter, well, follow me on Twitter at scribe_light. Yes. Also, if you will direct your attention to the top of the chat box, for those of you that are live or watching in the future, there is a couple of links there for some GoFundMes to friends of the show, Shady Grin and his kitten. They are both either friends thereof or they themselves are in need of some help. So if you have a couple of extra bucks and can spare them, please consider checking out those two GoFundMes. So, and thank you, Kiever Dam, as always, for posting those. All right. With all that as preamble, we have a talk that comes in at just over 16 minutes. So this is a serious TEDx talk. I'll start off with a few seconds for a sound test. You guys tell me if you can hear this, and then we will proceed.
When was the last time that you were really, really scared?
I mean, you know, I was kind of worried that Cobb Vanth would be dead, but then there was that after credit scene, so... You know, actually, truth be told, I'm more worried about Max Rebo, of all things, but that's a whole other issue. You guys hear that okay? Let me know in the chat window. Who else is here while I'm waiting? Emperor W.R. Costin, Shell D, Jonathan Peterson. Who else? I think that's if I missed you, I apologize. Let's see. Yeah, I hear it fine, says Jaeger Pony. Well, if Jaeger Pony hears it, then everybody's good to go. Okay, so when was the last time I was really scared? I don't know. You tell me.
Who did you turn to in your time of need?
Okay. Well, to be serious from the last time I was really scared was probably when I had the hemorrhage in my eye, and I went basically blind in that eye. And so I turned to my sister because my sister has always been my friend. And in that situation, she was an even better friend because she already has similar issues with her sight. So it was kind of a, support system. So there you go. I was scared about losing my sight, and I turned to my sister.
I'm lucky.
Okay.
I have always found safety and comfort in my home with my family.
Okay. I mean, I can't say it's always found comfort. There was some, growing up pains between myself and my father, but yeah, okay. Yeah.
But the same
Yeah.
is not true for everyone.
You don't say.
I can't forget this one harrowing phone call
Oh.
that I received in the early days of the pandemic.
Okay.
Help me, please. This young 15-year-old girl was pleading with me over the phone.
A young 15-year-old girl just out of the blue. I'm sure we'll get context in a minute. But as Kiever Dam so deftly points out, yes, we already have something for the bingo card. Let's go to the bingo card real quick. So that was a childhood or family anecdote. So we're going to circle childhood or family anecdote, and we'll also circle free space just by default. Okay, so keep an eye on the bingo card, guys. Remember, bingo card B, and let's proceed.
It was January 2020, and schools had shut down indefinitely in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong? Oh, okay, because I was thinking, I don't think things really got cooking over here until like, what, March of last year? Oh, sorry, not last year. Time flies. March of 2020?
She shared that her parents had told her that they would have to take her back home because they couldn't afford to live in the city without work.
I'm missing context. Why would a 15-year-old girl from Hong Kong be calling you? I'm not trying to be, adversarial. I honestly don't know. I don't understand anything.
She was afraid that her family was going to force her to get married.
Oh.
Especially since there was no certainty on when she would return to school again.
So beginning of the pandemic, a girl called you because she was. I'm sorry, guys. I need to go back. I've had such a barrage of ideas and notions thrown at me in the last few seconds. I need to review. Okay.
It shut down indefinitely in Hong Kong.
Sorry, I didn't go back far enough. Okay, let's just make sure.
I can't forget this one harrowing phone call that I received in the early days of the pandemic.
Early days of the pandemic.
Help me, please.
Help me, please.
This young 15-year-old girl was pleading with me over the phone. It was January 2020, and schools had shut down indefinitely in Hong Kong.
Okay, schools had shut down indefinitely in Hong Kong because of the pandemic.
She shared that her parents had told her that they would have to take her back home because they couldn't afford to live in the city without work.
Why didn't they have work? What?
She was afraid that her family was going to force her to get married, especially since there was no certainty on when she would return to school again.
Okay, so school's closed. She can't go to school. The family can't afford to live in the city. Why would they have not? Were they living in the city beforehand? Are they not able to afford to live in the city because the schools are closed? What would having to force her to get married have anything to do with her going to school? I'm confused.
I can't speak to my teachers or school social workers, she said.
Why?
I can't even talk to my friends.
Why?
If they tell their parents, our community is so small. I'm afraid that it'll all happen even faster.
Okay.
She said. You've got to help me, please.
Who are you to her?
This conversation is etched in my mind. I think about this girl every day. The last I heard from her, she was on her way to the airport. But without laws against forced marriage in place in Hong Kong
Yeah.
and little evidence that this would be her fate, I never heard from her again.
Okay, I'm confused at the chain of events, but granted that all of this is true, that's kind of a horrifying situation. I didn't know that that was a thing that went on in Hong Kong, but okay. Um, I'm waiting for the connection between the pandemic and the situation that seems to exist independent of any outside circumstances. Ebony Williams, hello. Brad Young, hello. If I missed anybody else, apologize. Okay.
I am a law professor,
Oh, okay.
and my work focuses on human rights issues,
All right.
especially those affecting the most marginalized communities in Hong Kong.
In Hong Kong. Okay.
In my research and in my community outreach work,
Uh-huh.
I come across many such young girls, girls from Hong Kong's ethnic minority communities who are at risk of forced marriage.
Okay, that's not good. And if you're able to help them in this way or somehow, that's good. But if it's legal, okay, there's more to the story here. Obviously, I'm waiting for what this has to do with the pandemic.
Sometimes we're
Uh-huh.
able to help them,
Yeah, good.
but sometimes they disappear.
Yeah.
Their parents take away their phones and laptops or whisk them out of Hong Kong, far beyond the reach of the city's jurisdiction.
All right.
These are Hong Kong girls. They become invisible, silenced.
So far, she's got my attention. I mean, I'd be curious to know seriously, not being facetious, what legal workaround there is to help such girls, or maybe not so legal. I don't know what kind of help she provides, to help them avoid this fate if it is legal to do this. So,
I understand what's at stake here.
okay.
I know well these familiar pressures of patriarchy.
Oh, patriarchy on the board. Circling that one. All right. So, how do you know the pressures of patriarchy?
What can we do? COVID has shown us the importance of community. I have found COVID really challenging and isolating.
You have, well, gosh, you're everyone has, and mostly because of governmental fiat.
And for many women and children,
Because men and boys don't matter. Or I guess boys could be included in children.
just having someone to turn to could mean the difference between leading a life of equal dignity or falling into complete oblivion.
Yeah, again, why ignore men? Men. Okay, here's the other thing. What do you think of the idea that the person that hypothetically or theoretically that this 15-year-old girl was going to be married to also did not want to be married? Why not just be against forced marriage, arranged marriage at all? Why make it about gender?
Yet COVID has been heralded as this great equalizer.
No, I'm sorry. Edward Woodward is the equalizer.
As though we've all experienced it in exactly the same way. But my work in Hong Kong reveals a different truth.
Okay. I don't know who told you that COVID was the great equalizer. I don't think it's actually the great equalizer. It's been used as a wedge politically and socially, even beyond anything reasonable regarding the disease itself. So, but that's just me, maybe.
That COVID is the great amplifier. It has made things far worse for Hong Kong's most vulnerable groups.
Okay.
Especially women and children.
Especially women and children. Okay. Well, admittedly, I know very little about what goes on in Hong Kong, so this is all new to me.
And even more so, those among ethnic minorities.
Okay.
COVID is beckoning us to build community before the next crisis strikes.
It is. Okay. Well, what is going to be your method of achieving this?
Did you know that during the early days of the pandemic, the number of cases of domestic violence doubled compared to the same period in 2019?
Gosh, I can't imagine what might have led to that. Perhaps forcing people to stay in their homes and crowded with each other and unable to leave, and taking away their jobs and taking away their freedoms and instilling them with fear and stress all the time. Maybe something like that. I don't know. And also preventing people from getting any kind of, social or moral support elsewhere because they were stuck. Thank you, Matt Barnes. I beg to differ. Edward Woodward is the tranquilizer. Mad Magazine told us so. Oh, man. No, that's a callback. That is a callback. Actually, I should say, was it John McCall? Right? Was it John McCall? Anyway, McCall was the Equalizer. Still, if you look up the original opening sequence for the Equalizer from the 80s, still one of the creepiest, best intros for a show. Like, just the imagery and everything in that show creeped me out as a kid. I loved it. Still good. Anyway, yes, I can believe that the number of domestic violence situations doubled. Are you going to tell us why?
Let's consider the impact of COVID on children.
Okay. Yeah. Keeping them from school, putting masks on faces so they don't have a whole lot of way to socialize with people or start recognizing facial, signals and things like that. Yeah. And the degradation of their education.
In the first 9 months of 2021, child abuse cases spiked sharply by 66%.
Yeah, you know why partly that is because with all of the lockdowns and all of the restrictions and everything else, child protective services, counselors, and everything else could not visit families in need. Again, you start cooping everybody up with one another all the time, every day, fearful of going outside, going to the doctor, doing anything. Yeah, it's going to increase. It's not a good thing, but it's also not unpredictable either. Thank you, Metal Murderer. John McCall of the Clan McCall. There can be only one. I mean, Denzel Washington's movies were okay, but it just doesn't, it's not the same. Just not the same. Just not the same.
The majority of these cases were physical abuse cases, which had increased by 70%.
Yes. More evidence that lockdowns did more harm than good, which they've only just admitted to in the last week or two, but which almost anybody with half a brain had figured out within the first 3 weeks, after the 2 weeks didn't work to flatten the curve.
While sexual abuse cases against children shot up by 62%. But COVID has driven even further underground child abuse cases.
Okay, again, I can agree. I mean, it wasn't COVID. Okay, let's stop conflating the disease with the policies put in place to quote unquote fight the disease. Okay, the pandemic did not do this. The pandemic did not set up the circumstances for these things to occur. All right, it was the overreaching, overly restrictive lockdowns, closures of businesses, destruction of people's careers, and on and on and on. Okay. Now, that doesn't take the blame off the people who did the bad deeds, but the cauldron that was put into place because of the policies is what led to this, not COVID.
Because children could not seek out their teachers or school social workers for help
Yes.
when schools were shut.
Yes. And who shut the schools? And what sense did it make to do so? What have we learned about that sense? And now, honestly, I don't know when this was recorded, so maybe that information hadn't come out yet. But all the same, we've known for quite a while now that the policies and the restrictions have caused more mental damage and more social unrest than simply the presence of the virus.
And this became very clear to me in May 2021 when I was called in to help with the case of a 4-year-old girl who was found to be severely malnourished. The case only came to light because schools had resumed and her teachers noticed that she was always hungry, lethargic, and pale.
Okay, is this an argument? I'm not quite sure what we're arguing for yet, because the title of the presentation leads me to believe that she thinks the conditions of the pandemic are a good thing, or as it says, an opportunity. But so far, she's just described how the conditions, the way the pandemic was treated, has led to more misery. So
her parents had routinely withheld food and drink from her as a way of punishing her.
What does that have to do with okay, maybe it would have been caught earlier, but that abuse was probably going to take place anyway. And truth be told, social services and child protective services are woefully understaffed and underfunded. So, okay.
Worse, this little girl
Yeah.
is in a children's ward at a public hospital.
What?
Because there is no place for her in foster care or residential care homes. Because there is a critical shortage of places in Hong Kong.
We're still in Hong Kong. Okay. Sorry, my mind keeps drifting back to other things. So all of this is in Hong Kong. Okay. And I'm horrified. What does this have to do with opportunities because of the pandemic?
This data highlights only the plight of the general population.
What?
But COVID has had a far more significant impact on ethnic minority communities due to poverty, unemployment, language barriers, racism, and visa precarities.
What? That has nothing to do with the disease. Okay, if she's using COVID as an umbrella word for the situation at all, okay, but shouldn't you be criticizing the governments that were imposing these restrictions on people, causing this stuff to rise in problems? I'm sorry to sound like a broken record, but I'm not sure where she's going or what the point is that she's trying to make here.
The intersections of the experiences and disadvantages has meant that they are far more vulnerable to falling through the gaps.
That was the case before the pandemic. That was not an unknown quantity before the pandemic. What does this have to do with the pandemic? Specifically, the numbers went up, but the numbers were already there. And okay, I need a mental break for a second. Let's go back to the bingo card real quick. Anecdote that probably never happened. I don't have any reason to disbelieve anything she said so far in that realm. Self-vilification or wretchedness. She hasn't really talked about herself. Systemic institutional. I don't think she said the words, but she's conceptually she might be getting there. Weightless example. I don't know what she's I don't know what her examples are exemplifying yet until she gets to her point. Word salad. I've understood what she's said. Leaves out vital context. If she doesn't get, we're almost halfway through this thing, and I still don't know what we're here for. Collectivize its own demographic. No, and I'm not going to count No, I don't think so. Not yet. White supremacy, no. A list, no. And the graphs don't count. Privilege, no. Sales pitch for product or service, not yet. Plays victim. Well, she empathized with the 15-year-old girl because she knew this, that, and the other. I don't know if that technically qualifies as playing the victim, because if she was actually been victimized. Yeah. Attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase, not yet. Wage gap. She's talked about socioeconomic disparities, so I'll allow it. Feminism, no, and you don't get feminism free just because patriarchy was mentioned. Mind reading assumes motives, not yet. Diversity, equity, inclusion, no. Marginalized, marginalization, yes. She talked about marginalized groups earlier. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. I really need to change that, because it should more clearly, it should be makes a non sequitur, an argumentative non sequitur, where she brings up something that has nothing to do with anything or whatever. But for now, I can't think of anything that fits. Contradicts own point or argument. I don't know what the point or argument is yet. Benevolent condescension. I mean, I guess it depends on where we go. It depends on what answers she gives us or solutions to this problem. And microaggressions and conscious bias, not specifically yet. So far on the board, we have free space, wage gap, patriarchy, marginalized, marginalization, and childhood or family anecdote. Oh boy. All right, back to it. Sorry, real quick, just happened up on the board. Matt Barnes, thank you again so much. I feel like she's spewing SJW talking points on the fly. Well, I mean, I'm waiting for all the threads to come together. She just, alluded to intersectionality. She's talked about patriarchy. So, gender disparity. She's mentioned women specifically and excluded men, which that might count for feminism at the end if she doesn't say it in aggregate. But yeah, where are we going with this? I mean, the title is telling me something, but we haven't gotten there yet.
Falling through the gaps.
Yes.
They become invisible and silenced. What can we do?
I don't know.
Since COVID restrictions have been implemented,
yes,
cramped living conditions,
yes,
work from home,
yes,
and online learning have turned households with abusers into pressure cooker situations,
yes,
in which victims have found themselves completely trapped.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay, so, and I'm glad if she is. Are we going to move on to the more detrimental aspects of the policies around the pandemic and not just keep calling it COVID did this?
Resources were already scarce since before the pandemic.
Yes.
And during the pandemic, 5,500 cases of domestic violence were reported to the Social Welfare Department.
How does that compare to previous years? I mean, any number beyond 0 is bad, but is that out of sorts?
Less than 5% of these reported cases could be housed at shelters across Hong Kong.
Okay. Not to be morbid here, but just to understand the scope of it. How much of an increase was that from prior years? Or was that what the chart was before? I don't know.
Because we only have 268 beds across 5 refuges.
206. Okay, well, all right. I believe you. What is your proposal to solve this problem, especially if you have to fight against the Chinese government, which prior to the pandemic obviously didn't care to do anything about the existing problem?
Even then, the shelters can only house these women for a couple of weeks at a time. In early 2020, 75% of domestic abuse victims were afraid to even go to shelters because they were afraid of catching COVID.
Yes, it was a pretty dumb way to run the situation, wasn't it? Okay, if we're going to be talking about learning lessons from this so we don't repeat the same mistakes in the future, I might be on board. I still don't know where we're going with this.
Can you imagine back then having to choose between protecting yourself against violence or risking COVID?
Yes, I can imagine. I can imagine that. I can imagine quite a bit. And whose fault was that again? What are you offering as a solution? What critique are you giving here? Or are you going to give a critique? Are you going to criticize the government? Because I hear that criticizing the government in Hong Kong and or China at all is not a wise move.
In the numerous calls that I've received and in my research, it has become clear that these systemic problems.
Systemic. All right, systemic is on the board. Circling systemic. These systemic problems, yes. Which systems implemented this?
Make women, especially ethnic minority women, uniquely vulnerable to abuse.
Yes, because men are not vulnerable at all. Men are never abused. Men are never put into vulnerable situations as a result of these lockdowns, loss of wages, loss of career, loss of access to medical care, counseling, and everything else. No, no, no. It's all the women. The other 50% of the population really can take care of themselves. Okay. Yeah, I'm circling feminism. I don't really need a whole heck of a lot else to know what the gist of that is.
In a heartbreaking example of this, in March 2020, I was called in to help a 19-year-old Punjabi woman who had sought assistance from an NGO.
Okay.
She shared that her husband had tried to strangle her one night after a severe escalation in verbal and physical abuse.
Okay. Stories like this just make my stomach churn. But all right, and?
She rang the police.
Uh-huh.
When they arrived, they spoke only to her father-in-law, who had answered the door and spoke fluent Cantonese.
Okay. The patriarchy at work, I guess.
At no point was any attempt made to verify the circumstances with her.
All right. What does that have to do with the pandemic? I'm not dismissing the story or the circumstances. I'm just absolutely confused as to what that would have happened anyway. Thank you, Matt Barnes. Problem experienced by men here / women most affected. Yeah. I mean, maybe it's the case in Hong Kong. The culture is a very specific kind of culture. I mean, it might be the case. But you would think that domestic violence et al. Would be a problem to try to tackle and not divvied up by gender, but that's never really been the case anyway. But okay. All right. So, lady's abused by her husband. Her father-in-law answers the door. Father-in-law speaks fluent Cantonese. The police did not bother to assess the situation elsewise. Why did they show up in the first place if they didn't have a clue that something was wrong? But okay.
The person who made the call in the first place.
Okay, the police suck. I don't doubt you. What does that have to do with the pandemic?
She was told to pack a few belongings to take with her to a shelter for things to cool down for a couple of days.
Okay. I mean, that's usually the most that they can do in those situations while they're investigating, if they're investigating. All right, so they removed her from the situation.
She gathered her things and picked up her 8-month-old daughter, only to be told to set her daughter back down.
It's his daughter, too. It's not solely her property. I mean, I have no idea the circumstances, and if that guy was an abuser, well, that sucks, but there are fathers have legal rights to their children as well. whether they're under suspicion of something nasty or not. And he hadn't been convicted of anything at that point. I don't know how the law works in Hong Kong, but the child does not solely belong to her.
She was going to return home in a couple of days anyway. And besides, there was no room for her daughter at the shelter.
Well, were they lying? And again, I'm not arguing for leaving children alone with abusive parents, but barring there being a legal restriction otherwise or something else, the father has the same rights to the kid as the mother does. And if there's no room for the kid at the shelter, I hate this kind. It's one of those things where it's like, yeah, logic dictates this, that, and the other. But at the same time, oh boy.
She was told.
Yeah.
Trusting this advice, this young mother left for the shelter for temporary respite against the violence.
Yeah.
But she was so desperate to see her daughter that she ended up leaving the shelter early. And she went home.
Yeah.
But when she got there, her family refused to open the door to her.
Okay.
It has been 21 months. And this young mother has not seen her daughter, hasn't been able to hold her or hug her.
Okay. I have no idea how things work in Hong Kong and or China. She has no legal recourse to custody of her daughter. I mean, it goes both ways, right? Or doesn't it? I don't know. Okay. But again, what does this have to do with the pandemic?
As a mother, just the thought of not being able to see my son is unbearable.
How about as a parent? Why do you have to continually make this about gender? As a parent.
But this young woman's tragedy
Yeah.
is invisible.
Okay.
Silenced.
Why?
What can we do?
I don't know. Okay. What is the legal situation as it pertains to Hong Kong that is preventing her from gaining custody of her child? Okay. I honestly don't know. I'm not being argumentative to be argumentative here. I honestly don't know. And you're not telling me. She has no recourse. There's nothing that can be done. The family just says no, and that's it. I want to understand, but I am so confused right now. Thank you, Johnny Hellcat. Accusatory tone. What did she do? I don't know. Mike R. leaves out vital context. Maybe. If she doesn't get to it quick here, we're going to get there real quick because between this story and trying to figure out how this connects to the pandemic, I'm already getting ready to circle that card. But it's the possibility she's going to draw it all together in the next 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whatever. So maybe. Thank you, Metal Murderer. We can serve party-sized portions of word salad. It's not word salad. It makes sense. It's not just corporate babble, but we're really going nowhere fast. This is not to diminish the tragedy of the story, but I don't understand where we are going in the presentation.
COVID isn't the root cause of domestic violence.
You don't say. So what are we talking about?
And these stories aren't new.
You're right. So why are we here?
But COVID is quicksand for victims of abuse, pulling them deeper into their hole of suffering.
What? Wait. Okay. If you're in a crappy situation to begin with, the circumstances created by all the policies, lockdowns, restrictions, closures, etc., during the pandemic have certainly not made things better. But what does that have to do with anything? And even if I just wave my hands and stipulate, yes, Lousy lives under COVID were even lousier. I'll agree. I have no reason to argue with that point. Okay? If you were a depressed person before COVID, being isolated for years on end, it certainly didn't help your mental health. I agree. Where are we going with this?
These stories really stick with me.
Yeah?
They haunt my conscience.
Why yours?
These systemic problems.
What? Systemic problems? Are you talking about the lockdowns? Are you talking about the lack of support in social services? What are we talking about?
Have been staring us in the face since before COVID.
Yes, it's this. Maybe it's just the bubble I've been living in for the last 5 years doing this stuff on YouTube and elsewise. But I have done, video after video on some of these same subjects: domestic violence, feminist theory, shelters for women, patriarchy, and on and on and on. And maybe it's just the bubble I've lived in. And everybody else had absolutely no idea these things were going on. All right. So is your argument that COVID has brought these things to light? All right. I'll tell you what. I will stipulate. Okay. I will stipulate that lousy life circumstances were made lousier by the pandemic. No argument there. I will stipulate that social services and support systems for people in abusive situations are not as fully and robustly funded and staffed as they should be. I will agree with you there. The same is true in America, although it sounds like a lot worse in Hong Kong, but I will stipulate to that, okay? And even for the sake of this presentation, I will stipulate that the stories that have come out during the pandemic have highlighted situations that otherwise might not have gotten the attention they would have without the pandemic. Okay, I will stipulate to all of it. So what?
And I ask myself, why aren't we more outraged? And what can we do to prevent the next tragedy?
I don't know. Tell me.
Systemic failures do need to be addressed.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that we need to sit back and wait for that to happen.
Well, of course it doesn't mean that. How could it mean that? What? No, I'm trying. Don't be too itchy on the trigger finger there, scribe. Just give it a minute.
Ask yourselves,
I am.
in these past 2 years, when you have needed support
with
a COVID-related problem, who have you turned to?
Everything is a COVID-related problem. And that's the same as all the news stories like somebody died from a COVID-related death. Yeah, gosh, there was a car crash and somebody died from a steering wheel-related death. Every problem I have had has been a result or related to COVID because we're all living underneath it. You could... Metal Murderer, thank you. We can invade and annex Canada. I want power armor. Yeah, because Alaska is the final frontier for oil in the resource wars. Okay, I'm backing up a little bit just so that I don't cut her off.
Ask yourselves,
yes,
in these past 2 years, when you have needed support
yes,
with a COVID-related problem,
yes,
who have you turned to? Government resources or websites? Or your virtual communities on Facebook and WhatsApp?
Not Facebook, not WhatsApp. I suppose it would be my virtual community of Lords of the Night, the various audience members thereof, and everybody who joins me for these sometimes pressure-relieving TED Excellences, amongst other things. So, yes. But also my family, and and my friends, the few that I'm still, in contact with as a result of the circumstances. Uh-huh. I mean, I can say, thankfully, I have not been in a situation or a problem that has required government intervention or social services. So I can't speak to that. But what are we working towards in this presentation? What argument are you making?
One of the most powerful things that COVID has shown us
Uh-huh.
is just how much of a difference each of us, ordinary people, can make in each other's lives.
COVID wasn't necessary to show that. Yes, under these difficult times, we have seen acts of great humanity and great community. It is true. But that is not unique to COVID. The stories you have told are not unique to COVID. Nothing you have talked about is unique to COVID. What are we doing here?
From organizing halal food for those who are in quarantine,
What?
to distributing masks and sanitizers and even laptops to those in need.
Yes, again, in a crisis, oftentimes people do come together to support one another. Yes, the tsunami. How about the tsunami? Japan, back when was it 2014 or whatever? Or was it, no, 2014? No, it was 2000. Sorry, 2004. Sorry. Oh my God, time flies. But you know what I'm talking about? An earthquake, a tornado, a building collapse. Yes. Yes. In terrible times, oftentimes brings out the best in people. Yes, I agree. So what?
We have the power to do something here.
Like what?
It is possible.
Like what?
In September 2020,
Yes.
a young 21-year-old woman WhatsApped me asking me for help.
Uh-huh. And again, I have no concept or context for who this lady is or why people are calling her. I'm assuming that she is running some organization for abused women or something. That's my only guess at this point. And if somebody's put it in the chat and I missed it, I apologize. Obviously, I missed it, but I can only assume that's the case. But okay, somebody WhatsApped you asking for help, and
her parents had forbidden her from going to community college anymore because they had plans to marry her off.
Okay.
She decided to run away. I tapped into our community, and I was able to arrange a shelter space, counseling, social worker support, fees for her education, legal representation, and somebody to accompany her.
Okay, and you know what? Kudos to you. I have nothing sarcastic or sardonic to say to that. Thank you so much for doing that. Thank you so much for helping that girl. Okay. You'll get no argument or cynicism from me on that point. But you did this while the pandemic was going on. So what does any of this have to do with the pandemic?
Within 1 month, with the help of trusted friends and professionals, we were able to reunite this family.
Okay.
They sat down and worked out a plan to enable her to complete her education and agreed to postpone the question of marriage till later.
Okay, I'm sorry. That is not a laugh of humor. That is a laugh of, are you kidding me? We're going to just defer the marriage question. I mean, I guess that's better than nothing, but that if the main source of the problem was her family wanting to force her into an arranged marriage, I think you only postponed the issue. But okay, maybe you bought her some time. That's better than nothing, I guess.
We can be the solution to this broken system.
What system? What system are we talking about? Are we talking about the system of arranged marriage? Are we talking about the system of lousy social support? And what solution? I mean, you arranged a whole bunch of resources for this girl. Great. I'm glad you did. And you, at best, postponed the very cause for her crisis. All right. You didn't solve it, but okay, great. And what are we, oh my God.
Let's act before the next crisis strikes.
Which crisis?
So how do we do this?
I don't know. I've been asking that question for 14 minutes and 3 seconds. As soon as you described what the problem was, I've been asking, well, how are we going to do anything about this? And now you've got 2 minutes. 2 minutes to tell us how. Please.
Let's recreate the village.
What?
We can do this on any scale that we choose.
What?
You could take a small micro action to disrupt abuse.
What?
The next time you hear what sounds like an abusive situation next door, ring the doorbell.
Okay, we have an official list on the board. We have a numbered list, so. So none of this has anything to do specifically with the pandemic. Oh. I figured it out. I mean, literally the case, right? I mean, unless something else happens in the next minute and 30 seconds, literally the case. She puts COVID, the pandemic, in the title of her presentation. And it's effectively a rhetorical Trojan horse for what she really wants to talk about. She used COVID as the opportunity to talk about the kind of justice she's looking for. It doesn't have anything to do with COVID. It's literally the case. That's what I'm going to have to believe is true here, because I don't understand it otherwise.
Ask for a cup of sugar.
What?
In India, this campaign successfully disrupted many situations of domestic violence.
How many is many?
Or you could offer more, your time, kindness, and compassion.
Okay, well, first and foremost, I would have to know that something's taking place within a home. 9 times out of 10, those doors and windows are closed. But yes, if I saw or had any notion that something terrible was happening between people, I mean, I've done it before. I've lived in this apartment building for a long time. I've had a lot of different people living above and below me. And once in a blue moon, I have had to call the cops because something sounded a little hinky going on one way or the other. So, okay, I'm with you there, I guess. Thank you, Metal Murderer, again. I have been taking a shot every time she says something stupid. Dude, stop. You're going to die of alcohol poisoning. This video keeps getting better and better. Yeah. Boy, you got beer goggles on for the TEDx. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, one pepper jack gets me through these. But take it easy, dude.
Show up by holding a victim's hand,
What?
being there for her as her confidant or her mentor.
Domestic violence victims are not only women. I understand that this is the world you live in and the focus of your work, but you are being ridiculously, and I would say, in all seriousness, dangerously dismissive of the circumstances that some men find themselves in.
For many victims of abuse, just having someone by their side as they navigate through the community system of support can make all the difference in the world.
Yes, I agree. And so, the classic line, See something, say something. Yes, okay, all right, and
Or thinking bigger.
like
Imagine
I
if we
imagine.
all came together to snowball change.
What kind of change?
What if we addressed the shelters and the lack of beds to help victims of abuse?
How? More money?
Or fostered a neglected child?
Yeah, I suppose you could do that too. But you'd first have to make sure there's enough staffing and infrastructure available to handle. I mean, if everybody went out tomorrow and said, I want to foster a neglected child, you wouldn't be helping things because the system that is already overloaded and understaffed would be even more so. So I think you need to start first with that whole system thing, right? And if we're talking about Hong Kong, I can't even imagine, or are we talking about Hong Kong? Because you talked about India earlier, and I don't even know where we are now.
How many of you out here own properties or can source vacant hotel rooms for those who need to escape violence?
I guess I could try to do something or donate to something. I donate to charities all the time. Yeah, okay. What does that have to?
In this room alone,
Yeah.
we have amongst us doctors, lawyers, teachers, counselors, realtors, people with networks, resources, and expertise.
Uh-huh.
Harness your power, your professionalism, and passion.
I was hoping for the other P, privilege, but we're not going to get it.
Let's turn COVID into an amplifier for action instead of inequality.
What?
Because that is what matters most now.
It doesn't make any sense.
And it is on us.
What?
Thank you.
Okay. All right. You know, I waited. I had, I think, ridiculous amounts of patience. But after all of that.
What? What is that? What the fuck is that?
Okay, and this is a tough one in the sense that, you know, the issues she was talking about, the information she was relaying, the problems that she was describing, those are real things. I am not here trying to criticize the reality or that she's saying it was overblown or anything else. For the sake of argument and without any other information, I will stipulate to everything she was describing. Okay? I mean, I might take exception to the inordinate focus on one gender as the only possible victims of such things. But aside from that, yes, these things are problems. Social services and support for victims of domestic violence, both in America and elsewhere, I'm sure, are woefully underfunded and understaffed. Child support services, family support services, classically, you know, depends on the jurisdiction, but in most places are underfunded and understaffed. I have heard and seen stories over and over again of abuse victims, children specifically, who fly under the radar because of lousy attentiveness by child protective services and social services. I've also seen ridiculous abuses by those same organizations who overreact or take the word of some nosy neighbor and destroy a family over nothing. So, yeah, it's a problem. It's a big problem. It's been a big problem for a long, long time. What does that have to do with COVID? What does any of that have to do with COVID? Yeah, okay. The pressure cooker, the cauldron, yeah, it amplified existing problems. I agree. We've known that mostly for the last 2 years. The rates of suicide that have gone up, domestic violence, child abuse, etc., not only because of people being cloistered together so closely all the time and forever and being put under the stress of no schools, etc., but also because there's no ability to go contact help. Or, as you said, there is a fear of going outside and breathing the air because everybody's going to just drop dead or something. That's how it was for that first year. And onward, really. So why are we here? What solutions did she offer to this? See something, say something, donate your time and or money to organizations that may be able to help. Okay, great. That the title was deceiving because it didn't actually do or say anything about what it said it would do or say. Okay, anyway, I've rambled on. Let's go to the bingo card and do our final pass at this and see if we come up with something interesting. Okay, so let's go over it one more time. And then I will take arguments for squares to be circled. Let me wet my whistle there a little bit. Okay, anecdote that probably never happened. I don't have any reason to believe any of the anecdotes or stories of abuse and elsewise that she described didn't happen. I could believe they happened. They didn't sound too perfect or something. So self-vilification or wretchedness in no way, shape, or form. Weightless example. I mean, in describing the problems and the failings of the social services system when it comes to victims of violence or abuse, I don't think any of the examples she provided were weightless. I'm trying to think of anything else. I mean, actually just COVID. I take it back. COVID as a concept had nothing. You could have done this exact same presentation, right? Taken the script for the presentation, done a find and delete on the text of the word COVID or anything related to it, and you would have had the exact same substance in the presentation. So COVID itself was the weightless example. Yeah, okay. Word salad. There's a difference between saying a bunch of things that just don't tell me anything and saying a bunch of things that are just babble, right? Just words that have no connection or meaning or whatever. I'm hard pressed to say that there was a period of time there where she said absolute nonsense. And I'm not talking about like something that was wrong, but something that was just, malarkey, as someone likes to say. Leaves out vital context. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. What does this have to do specifically with COVID? What happened to the girl? Yeah, all this stuff. Okay. Collectivize his own demographic. She said that she could empathize with that first girl's situation in the abstract, but she also talked about how, her situation was unique and or lucky because her family was supportive. So I don't know that she ever Yeah, I can't say so. I mean, maybe you guys heard something I didn't, but I don't think that qualifies. White supremacy. No, she never talked about race. So no. Privilege. Okay. Can something be derived to equate to that? I mean, I can't draw a straight line. See, this is where I'm hesitating. I might almost say, well, she implied across the board male privilege, right? But that is also tied to patriarchy. So not having said the word specifically, I'm hesitant to make a twofer out of one concept. So I'm going to say no. Sales pitch for product or service. I don't want to say that suggesting people donate to charities and things is a sales pitch for a product or service. The idea behind that square is that the TEDx stage is being used specifically as a sales meeting, a pitch meeting, and just suggesting in abstract people donate their time or energy to a charity or to a productive system or a charity or something. Sorry, I'm losing my words. That doesn't count to me as a product or service. So if you have an argument elsewise, I'll entertain it, but I can't say so. Plays victim. Not really. I didn't hear her play the victim. She was talking about being the one facilitating help. So attempt to coin new buzzword, buzz phrase. I didn't hear anything new in there. Mind reading assumes motives. I mean, her stories were so specific. I don't know. Was there? There's a little, like in the back of my head, something's like picking at me saying, yeah, there was an example there, but it's not coming to me specifically right now. Diversity, equity, and inclusion. No, She never said the words, and that wasn't the thrust of this. Make something about race, sex, etc. for no reason. Was there a non sequitur in there? Like I say, no, it wasn't a complete non sequitur because she showed the graphs that showed the increase because of COVID, etc. So it wasn't without reason. So I can't double dip on COVID there. Contradicts on point or argument. I mean, her argument was there are systems and people in this world that are suffering, and if you can help, please help. I mean, sure. I guess that's not a contradiction. It's just sort of a, well, sure reaction. Benevolent condescension. I mean, to men, that somehow men can't also be victims of these things, that men don't need support, that women, that part was a bit of benevolent condescension. And let's see, let me refresh that. And lastly, microaggressions, unconscious bias. I mean, she never said the phrases. Because part of the reason that I'm having such a hard time with this is that this whole talk, I just kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, and it was just example after notion, and then we didn't really get to the meat of it till the very end. And so, okay, I'm going to need your help with this, guys. I'm going to need your support. I'm going to need you as a support system in continuing the bingo card. So that is as much as I can legitimately argue for squares to be circled. If you have arguments for squares to be circled, please put them in the chat now. Be sure to tag me in your argument so I can see it more clearly. I'll scroll up a bit for any I might have missed in the meantime. Let's see. Ryan R. I was beaten by my mother for more than a decade, many times publicly by my mother. Nobody had a free hotel room or shelter for me. Guess I was born with the wrong genitalia. At least insofar as this lady's concerned. Although, depending on circumstances, maybe you wouldn't be included in the whole children part because children and women are but I'm sorry to hear that, Ryan. That sucks. But yeah, I mean, if you were an adult man, you wouldn't count as far as this lady's focus was concerned. Oh boy. Metal Murderer Scribe Light collectivizes his own demographic. By stating that she was lucky to have a supportive family, she implied that a majority of Indian families are not supportive of female children. I don't know if I'd go that far. That'd be quite a stretch of an implication because she never mentioned anything about her own culture or background. So I mean, if somebody else wants to pick that up or you want to try to refine that a bit, but that might be a bit too far. Renovation. It's a sales pitch for feminists to get even richer from the suffering of others. Like I said, if I was being 100% cynical, maybe I'd agree with you. But ultimately, even though, like I say, I take exception to her focusing specifically on one gender as possible victims of domestic violence, but elsewise, she was talking about helping people and using resources to get people out of trouble. I can't fault her for that ultimately, or say that she was being mercenary about it. So, Lexi Mads. Oh yeah, I'm making an incredible chicken word salad right now. We start with chicken strippers and it just gets better. Thank you, Lexi. Bridget collectivizes all women as victims. Women are a demographic, or all victims are women. Oh, now that one I can get behind. I got you there. All right. You know what? You got me. Collectivize his own demographic. Okay. You won that round, Bridget. Let's see. Keeverdam. She said the words racism and ethnic minority. Yeah, but that's not, but she was almost all of her examples came from Hong Kong or India. So if that was supposed to, well, I mean, I guess what square are you referring to? Is that an argument for? If you're talking about white supremacy, that doesn't work on its face. If you're talking about I don't know. What are you talking about? I'm just guessing. Mental murderer Scribe when describing the ask for a cup of sugar in India, she did not cite any sources or numbers for the actual decrease in domestic violence incidents that the program was great. Yes, and I would say that leaves out vital context, unless you're arguing for something else. So yeah, not giving us information is the leaves out vital context thing, or depending on the circumstances, perhaps a weightless example. But thank you, Point Curation. Not related, but mailing out more art on Tuesday. If anyone would like some, please contact me. You don't need to pay. Also, drop prices on my shop. As always, Point, be sure to post your link to your store in the chat for people to take a look. And yes, guys, take a look at Point's art. It's great. And he, like you said, is basically giving it away. So if you want some nice artwork for your wall, get a look at Point's art. Thank you, Point. Peter Silak, 313, inequality. She said at the end, let's make COVID an amplifier for change, not for inequality. She thinks COVID is being used to amplify inequality. Well, she's not, okay. She's not wrong, but she's wrong in the sense that it was COVID. She should have been talking more about the policies. And she did mention it at one point, so I can't completely fault her for it. And if she was using COVID as this umbrella term for the whole situation, then I guess she's not wrong, because like she said, and like I completely stipulate to, all the lockdowns, all the restrictions have amplified people's misery. And along with that, all the bad people were already bad, and they got even worse when they had nowhere to go and no one to go to. So in that sense, she's not wrong. You see, I don't know how any of what she said was going to solve it, or what that had to do specifically with COVID, but it all depends on the context. And Metal Murder, no, I was arguing weightless example with that. My apologies. Oh, sorry. Where's it? Describing ask for sugar, she not. Well, I guess the only way I could make that a weightless example is if she was recommending to do something like that to disrupt stuff, but she didn't give us any effectiveness as to, what effectiveness it had. She said she just disrupted many situations. Well, how many is many? I'm on the fence on that one. Okay, so guys and ladies, because I don't want to be, discriminatory here. If you think that the very late in the game example of asking for a cup of sugar to disrupt something, but not providing any information on how well that was actually working, if that constitutes a weightless example, put a 1 in the chat now. If you think it doesn't quite make it, put a 2. 1 for yes, 2 for no. And I will entertain that one. And Kyle Mack says, guys is unisex. Well, Kyle, I like to play it safe. You never know. You never know. Guys and gals, right? Guys and gals. There was always a distinction in a way. It depends on the context, sure, but just to play it safe. We're getting up on Valentine's Day, so it's about recognizing the birds and the bees, right? Both sides of the equation. The rumble bus. I don't know what I'm saying right now. Let's see. I got a 1. I got a 3. I got a 1. I got a 5. I got a 1. Let's see. Jaeger Pony 1. Okay. All right. I will take that. Wait, weightless example. I already circled weightless example. Oh no. I already circled it for that other thing. I'm dumb. I apologize. Well, that was, yeah, okay. Well, that was a vote for Boy, I'm brainless tonight. I don't know. I had, guys, I didn't mention this at the top. I had a ridiculously terrible migraine last night just as I was going to bed. And I've been a little off all day. So that's not an excuse for this, but it might be a reason. Just as a note. Yeah. Okay. So apologize for that. That's my bad. Keeverdam was wanting me to know that her previous comment was making something about race is what I was arguing for. Yeah, she never really drew it to race. She talked about ethnic minorities, but in Hong Kong, she never specified like who that was or how that applied. And then in India, yeah, you know what? Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. She brought up race, but she never really told us any more about how that applied. If she told us more about the details of the story, maybe it would make some sense. But for the sake of the presentation, it just wasn't there. So I agree. I agree. Okay. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? Thrashy, time for a TED talk about migraine during COVID. Yes. You know, COVID is an opportunity to talk about migraines. Yeah, well, possibly so. Any other arguments for squares to be circled? If I missed your previous argument, please post it again. Anything else? All right. Kyle Mack. If that wasn't word salad, I don't know what was. Let's see. Mike R says the decision for the WTF word salad. Well, my WTF had more to do with what did any of this have specifically to do with COVID, because it was a false lead, right? It was a Trojan horse. So does that make everything word salad because it didn't have anything? I mean, in relation to the title of the presentation and what she said she was doing, yeah, kinda.
Bingo. What? Of course!
No, you're right. She kept floating from one thing to another. And how many times did I ask, what are we talking about? Where are we going with this? And so on and so forth. No, you're right. No, it's legit. It is legit. I mean, it wasn't as blatant as a paragraph of nonsensical words, but as a structured presentation, there was a passive point to point, example by example, where are we going? It was just a random combination of things. Also, you know, another one that would have made sense for make something about race for no reason. She talked about intersectionality, but then never went anywhere with it, really. So, yeah. All right. Well, we have at least one bingo, which is an accomplishment of a kind. I mean, that was the sort of the confounding thing about this presentation. If it weren't for the inclusion of COVID as some sort of argument point, save for, yeah, okay, things got worse with the policies and lockdowns, which I can't argue with. But outside of that, I mean, do I think that domestic violence is a problem? Yes. Is the abuse of children and other people in a home bad? Yes. Are social services drastically in most places understaffed and underfunded? Yes. Are these issues that need to be addressed? Yes. Can you address them by asking for a cup of sugar or abstractly offering up your networks to do things? Or maybe. But she could have spent the latter half of her presentation detailing those things more specifically, because, I mean, unless you're an absolute monster, and I know they exist out there, arguing that domestic violence is a problem that needs to be addressed or that more needs to be done about, for most people, you're pushing at an open door, right? But you know, word salad again, in a way, she couldn't decide whether this was about domestic abuse or arranged marriages or broken systems or COVID. And, honestly, that whole thing about how she saved that girl from that situation of forced marriage, but marriage would be talked about at a later time. Did she really get her out of forced marriage? Or again, just kind of delay the inevitable? I don't know. Anyway. So yeah, a perplexing TEDx, and not perplexing in the usual way, but perplexing in the, what was the point? Why are we here? Yes, there are terrible things going on. There are a lot of terrible things going on under COVID. There are a lot of things that happened to people under COVID that wouldn't have happened otherwise. If you'd been talking about the massive loss of employment and mom and pop operations or small businesses all being destroyed while big businesses were allowed to flourish, that could be something specifically tied to COVID, but none of what you talked about, speaking rhetorically to the speaker, had anything specifically to do with COVID. All of those situations, circumstances, and otherwise existed before. And maybe the results of it overwhelmed an already overwhelmed system, but you didn't tell us about the laws in Hong Kong or the policies in India just to say that this happened in Hong Kong. Most of those stories, they could have been told from just about anywhere on the planet, COVID or otherwise. So, all right. Well, anyway, everyone, there's the show. Just as a programming note, I'll be doing a Sunday stream this week on Sunday, if you can believe it. 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. What topic will it be? I have an idea, but I don't want to give it away yet because heaven knows something might come up on Saturday that catches my attention. I do that instead. So be sure to join me for that. Also, be sure to check out the panoply of videos on my channel. I got stuff from all over the place, from all over the when and times and things. Some stuff from years ago that are oddly relevant now, as I'm finding out. Thank you, Keeverdam. Circle the whole card. Yes. Okay. I'm terrible. I am a terrible person. I keep forgetting that. Thank you, Keeverdam. Thank you so much. Let me do that and then do this. There we go. And thank you, Chicago Mike, for the good job, Dogcat Fox. Oh, Dogcat Fox.
Wowee, wow.
Yes, thank you, Dogcat Fox. And thank you, Chicago Mike. Appreciate it. And otherwise, what are the things I want to say? Yes, be sure to check out the GoFundMe's at the top of the chat box for his kitten and Shady Grin's friends. If you have a couple extra bucks that you can donate, please think or consider doing so. If you scroll up a little bit from here, you'll see the link to Point Curation's art store, Etsy store. Go check that out for cheap and or free art, or contact Point directly for such things. He's got plenty, and he's happy to get it to you. And what else? If you like my stuff, if you like any content creator stuff, be sure to share it and let them know that you shared it, because they'll be happy to know that you did. Especially me, if you tag me in a tweet about sharing my stuff, let me know, because I appreciate that you do, and I want to thank you personally if you do. I think that covers all the bases. So with that, everyone, thank you for joining me. Hope you learned something, or learned how to analyze things differently or something. Who knows what we'll find next week on TED Excellence. There you go. Hope everybody's had a good Thursday. Hope everybody has a good rest of your week and weekend. I hope you're all safe and well. If you're not well, please get well soon. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.